It's strange, isn't it? The moment the world around you falls silent, something changes. You become acutely aware of things you didn't notice before. The faint hum of a refrigerator, the ticking of a clock, even the subtle rhythm of your own breath. And then, out of nowhere, comes that unmistakable feeling: discomfort. It's like the silence itself is pressing against you, urging you to fill it with something. Anything. But why? Why does the simple absence of sound, something so harmless, make us so uneasy? Here's the thing. It's not the silence itself that's the problem. It's what silence does to us. For most of us, sound isn't just background noise. It's a constant companion, a kind of scaffolding that props up our mental state. Even when we're not paying attention, the hum of activity, conversations, music, traffic, creates a sense of continuity. It's like a safety net for the brain. And when that net disappears, it's like stepping off a ledge. Silence forces the brain to adjust, and that adjustment feels unnatural. You see, our brains are wired for stimulation. They crave input, patterns, novelty, something to process. In a world without sound, the brain becomes restless, even panicked, because it's lost one of its main sources of engagement. And that's when the brain starts to turn inward. Suddenly, without the distraction of noise, you're face to face with your own thoughts. And let's be honest, that's not always a pleasant experience. In the stillness, the things you've been avoiding tend to rise to the surface. Anxieties, regrets, unfinished conversations, or maybe just that nagging feeling that you should be doing something else. Your brain, desperate to escape this internal confrontation, might even create its own kind of noise. It overthinks, overanalyzes, spiraling into a storm of thoughts just to fill the silence. Now here's where it gets even more fascinating. Not everyone experiences silence the same way. For hearing-impaired individuals, silence isn't unsettling. It's normal. It's their default state, something they've adapted to from an early age. For them, discomfort might come from a completely different kind of sensory disruption, like visual chaos or a sudden lack of tactile input. Silence for them isn't the absence of something they've grown used to. It simply is. And this highlights an important truth. What makes silence uncomfortable isn't the silence itself. It's the contrast. It's the sudden disruption of the sensory environment we're accustomed to. For hearing individuals, life is full of sound, so silence feels like a void, an absence. But for someone who lives in a world without sound, silence isn't a void, it's their baseline. This contrast explains why modern life makes silence feel even more alien. Think about it. We live in an era of constant noise. Cities buzz with activity. Our phones beep and ping with notifications. And even when we're relaxing, we're often streaming music, podcasts, or TV. Silence in this hyper-connected world feels almost unnatural. But it wasn't always like this. For much of human history, silence wasn't something to be avoided. It was simply part of life. Nighttime in a village or out in the wild was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves or the distant howl of an animal. People lived in rhythm with natural sounds, not the constant hum of technology. And yet, even then, silence could be unsettling. There's an evolutionary reason for this. In nature, sudden silence often signals danger. When animals stop chirping, rustling, or calling, it might mean a predator is nearby. Our ancestors learned to associate silence with a need for heightened alertness. That instinct hasn't entirely left us. But here's the twist. Silence doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It's not inherently good or bad. It's what we bring to it that defines the experience. For most of us, the discomfort we feel in silence is a habit. We've trained ourselves to avoid quiet moments by filling every gap with sound, activity, or distraction. Over time, this has made silence feel foreign, even threatening. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Learning to sit in silence is like retraining the mind. At first, it's awkward, even painful, like trying to hold a difficult yoga pose. But over time, the discomfort fades, and something remarkable happens. In silence, the noise of the world falls away, and the signal of your inner self grows clearer. Thoughts settle, clarity emerges. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting the things we rarely take the time to notice. Our desires, our fears, our unresolved questions. Yes, this can be uncomfortable, but it can also be profoundly liberating, because in silence, you stop running. You stop distracting yourself, and you start listening. Not to the world outside, but to the one within. So, the next time you find yourself in a silent room, feeling that creeping discomfort, don't run from it. Sit with it. Let it wash over you. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of possibility. And what makes us squirm isn't the quiet itself. It's the truths it reveals when we finally stop to hear them.